Good afternoon, good morning, hello to each and every one of you, and thank you so much for being here today. My name is Tori Cooper. I'm the Director of Community Engagement for the Transgender Justice Initiative at the Human Rights Campaign, and so honored and excited that you all are here with us today. We're going to take just a couple of minutes. I'm going to be joined by Valerie Spencer and also by Taiyo Drake. We're going to welcome you all into the room, and then we're going to get started with some healing. Thank you again for joining today's Trans Talks called Minding My Business. And that's all about self-care, mental and emotional wellness for the trans and non-binary community, and really some tips that every person who's watching can take away from today. So thank you so much for being here. I already am seeing wonderful feedback. Hello to you, Brian Hollenbeck. Hello to you, Matt. Hi, Taiyo. Hi, Valerie.
Hi.
Hi. Can we hear you, Taiyo?
Absolutely. Now you can.
All right, great. Well, we're going to get started in about 5 minutes. I'm going to do a little short intro to both of you. But this is really just an opportunity for us to allow some more folks to get into the room. All right. How's your day going so far?
Really well.
Great. How's Miss Lulu?
Miss Lulu's really well.
Wonderful. And the fur baby, Taiyo?
I'm currently looking at you and then looking down because my white Zoom bomber of a cat is about ready to jump in my lap. And if I'm not paying attention, he'll get my looking at you, looking at me.
Oh no, you said white Zoom bomber. That terrifies.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's a little bit. And if I don't pay attention, he grabs my feet.
I got you. You have to watch out with those kind of keywords.
Mine is a black Zoom bomber.
Right.
The dogs are in the room, so he's like, freedom. Yeah.
Oh, I understand. Hello, Misha from Colorado. Hello, Jill. Pleasure to meet you. And again, Matt from France. Bonjour, bonsoir. And hi, Max. Thank you for joining us. We thank you for being here today. Self-care is so very, very important. And you've got some experts here who are going to provide some really interesting, expert, lived experience, professional experience, all those other kind of things. Some things that each of us will be able to take away. And you'll notice they have very, very different approaches, but are equally effective. The bottom line is you just got to do it. All right, so thank you so much. Hello, Chris from Jacksonville. Hi, Lisa from Boston. Yes, it is a perfect evil genius, Cat Eve. I totally agree. And hello, Jasmine from South Carolina. Hi, Jill. So you all, it's about 5 minutes past the hour. So I'm going to do some quick introductions, and then I'm just going to move out of the way and let you all take it away, all right? So again, my name is Tori Cooper. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm the Director of Community Engagement for the Trans Justice Initiative at the Human Rights Campaign. I am a Black trans woman, absolutely inspired by both of you and the brilliance that you're going to share with each of us over the next hour. And first, in the order that you're going to speak today, Reverend Valerie Spencer, MSW. We've known each other for a few years, a few years. And I actually followed you and was a fan of yours before we became friends. I'm very honored to say that. I am always inspired by the words that you bring and by the life that you live and the way that you live it. I know that you're going to encourage folks and also push them and challenge them in ways that are going to promote growth. I want you to start off after I also give a little brief intro on Taiyo. Also want you to just tell a little bit about your background. And then Taiyo is going to Valerie's going to do 20 minutes, then Taiyo's going to do 20 minutes. And Taiyo, I'm a fan of yours as well. That fat ass is too big to get on the floor and do yoga. But the principles that you talk about are absolutely brilliant. And the mindfulness that you not only instruct people on, but also model for people, I think is really, really important. And for folks who just want to see resilience, I encourage them to Google you, because all three of us are Googleable, and both of you are definitely Googleable. So Google you and find out more. And at the end, we're going to take some questions from the audience. And we're also going to make sure that people have ways to contact you, because both of you also are contractors and consultants. So you do this work, not just live this life. All right. So with that being said, I'm going to pass the mic, and I'm actually going to disappear. When you all see me, that means you have 2 minutes left. So Valerie, my sister, would you please share your brilliance with the world?
Well, first of all, good afternoon, good day to wherever you may be in the world. I know, sense, feel, and affirm that your life is flowing miraculously despite the physical appearance of it. I want to give honor to a couple of things. I want to give honor to, first of all, the land that I'm actually living upon, the land that I'm actually moving upon. This is indigenous land. We know this land today as Los Angeles, but we also know that a great deal of effort was made to turn it into that. But I want to honor the indigenous spirit of the land that I move on and that I live on and that I have my being on and within. I also want to honor the energy that we know as trans. It's been called many things all over the world. We are Afafina, we are Mahu, we are shaman, we are many, many things. But we help, not introduce, but we help promote the idea of healing, and we always have throughout all of the cultures, and we have served purposefully in that way. So I just want to honor the healing energy that my people, trans, non-binary people, genderqueer people, and all the other names that may evolve from this dynamic energy that we share. I just want to honor the healers that we are. And because we are healers, we have access. Oh, let me cut my phone off, child. They're trying to get at me. Because we are healers, we have access to what I call some confidential information. We have access to some internal resources that many of us don't tap into. Why? We get, as and justifiably so, we are highly stimulated by the environment that we live and move in. We're highly stimulated by our trauma stories and our trauma narratives. And sometimes we are so stimulated, triggered, activated by our trauma narratives that we don't develop a healing narrative to counter some of that trauma narrative, leading to what I call intentional release. Also, let me just introduce myself completely. My sister Tori Cooper and I have been fellow lionesses on top of many hills for many years. So I honor my sister. And I am Reverend Valerie Spencer. So I am a behavioral health therapist. I'm a holistic life coach. I'm an interfaith minister. And most importantly, I'm the founder and director of Sacred Vision for an organization called Holistic Empowerment Institute. And you can visit us and find out all about what we do and are doing at beholistic.org. And that's going to be coming up on your screen, I suppose, at some point. And at Holistic Empowerment Institute, our goal, there we go, our goal is to merge evidence-based practices with what I call the sacred. I want to help you and support you making your spiritual practice very common, very approachable, and very doable. And the good thing about a spiritual practice, specifically a spiritual practice that is designed to support positive mental health, which is what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting that a spiritual practice can support you in your anxiety. A spiritual practice can support you in your depression symptomology. And the beautiful thing about a spiritual practice is you get to design or fall into a already existing trellis for yourself. Meaning, if you want God in your spiritual practice, wonderful. Put all the God in it that you like. But if you don't want God in your spiritual practice, you don't have to have God in your spiritual practice. You can have prayer in it or not have prayer in it. And I've designed a way at Holistic Empowerment Institute to really walk you through the process of designing your own spiritual practice to support your positive mental health outcomes. I created my own special lane. Here's the name of the lane. It's a huge mouthful, but get ready. LGBTQ, spiritually integrative community mental health and healing. That's what I'm all about, supporting community mental health and healing for queer people just like me. So now, why is all of this important to me? I have had my experience with depression. Like many of you who are trans, several of the social norms came up for me. I'll give you some of my social norms. I was really depressed for many years because I wanted to find a mate. And more importantly, I got really challenged by seeing certain access to love and relationships that I, as a trans woman, did not have. And that really, really, really bothered me. It bothered me on a soul level, and it led to my depression. It even led to my suicidal ideation. I did not want to be here anymore. I did not feel loved, appreciated, or validated by the culture. And sometimes we still don't, right? Can I have a cocktail break for a second, please? Sometimes we still don't feel validated and celebrated by the culture. And so I got to the point where I knew I didn't want to really kill myself. But I also knew that I really didn't believe in God no more. I felt like you kind of jacked me up, God. This is too much for me to bear. And through prayer and meditation, we worked our relationship out slowly. And I must tell you, as someone who does believe in a higher power, I humanize my higher power, my relationship with my higher power. We get into fights, spats, arguments. We don't speak to each other for days. We kiss and make up. That's the relationship that I have with my God. And that relationship supports me having positive mental health outcomes because I'm able to be honest. I'm able to tell the truth, right? Often trans people, when we come before social service persons or even persons in the mental health industry or in the medical industry, we do what I call wellness drag. Wellness drag. I'm good. I'm okay. Everything is fine. Being trans is great. I get a little down from time to time, but on the whole, I'm straight, I'm cool. And because we don't want to appear as crazy, another crazy trans person before these people, because we don't want to promote the idea that being trans is to be mentally ill. We play like everything is fine, and we rarely go through an authentic, and I suppose Taiyo's going to talk more about this later, an authentic therapeutic experience where we get to explore. And we deserve that. We need that. We have to express the pain. We have to express the challenge of being trans, even while knowing that we are healed, whole, and complete. Even though that, I don't know what's wrong with my little respiratory stuff I'm going through, but y'all work with me. And so I have some things that I do pretty much every day that support my mental health. And I want you to sort of go throughout your life and sort of look at, what can I do every day? Nothing too deep. Now, some of us love a really deep spiritual practice. We love a spiritual practice that has punishment in it and reminders, but some of us like to chill, right? I like to drive to Malibu and just hang out with God, right? That's my idea of an ideal spiritual practice. So go throughout the threads of your life and ask yourself, where might a spiritual practice be? And look at some creative approaches. The point of it is not to worship something out of yourself, but to center yourself, to have some moments, some experiences of what I call intentional joy and celebration, right? Of what I call some intentional reflection, turning to what I call the sacred core. Everybody, take your hand, beautiful instrument. Take your hand, grab the palm of your hand right fast, and connect that hand to what I call the sacred core. It's a little bit lower than I'm coring today. I like my core to be down here, but I designed it to be up. Touch in with your core. Become familiar with your heartbeat. without judging, without critiquing. And just honor the vessel that you operate in. Often as trans people, we want to change it, manipulate it, but just for a moment, let's just honor without critique. Let's just honor the vessel that we operate in. And dare I say, give thanks and gratitude. I'm really grateful for my body. I'm really grateful for how my body is holding me throughout the stresses of my life. I'm really grateful for how my body is supporting me in all the ways that it is, bigger or smaller. I really honor this vessel and give thanks for it. Right? If you can do that practice, just that. Now, here's the thing. We've checked in with ourselves. Now let's put some signposts along the way. Let's put some little nuggets along the journey of the day that as we find these little Easter eggs of living, we go, ooh, so right, I'm going to check in with my core. And what do I want to put? I want to put grace in my day. I want to honor my day by putting peace of mind and clarity in my day. I want to put joy in my day today. I speak joy and beauty in my day. For me personally, I speak guidance and direction into my day. And for me also, and for you, I speak happiness into our day, thrilled about life into our day. And so it is. And so now we've put little nuggets, little Easter eggs along the journey. Instead of putting complication and difficulty, my life is awful. It's so hard to be trans. Look at how they treat us. All of those things are true. But you have more power than perhaps you are utilizing at present. Turn into the self. The out there can't fix it for you. They don't understand us completely, but the internal understands, right? The divine connection understands. And because we are naturally, that's been our purpose on the earth, to serve as an intermediary between the divine and humankind, because we naturally occupy that space of healing. And even when we're not trying, we do these things naturally. I invite you to give the sacred core and some of those things a try. I don't know about you, but some of my other tools, I'd have to get up because they're right over there. But I love to pour libation for myself, which is something from the Ifa tradition, something from the Swahili and the African tradition. I love to do those things and pour into my day. I also love to smudge my space with sage. I do that for me. I smudge my mom, because your environment, your space, is a very huge part of your positive mental health. And just as you've spoken into yourself and spoken into your experience of your day, you can also speak to the environment that you occupy. Speak peace into that environment. Speak peace into that environment, and don't let people in that would throw you shade. Don't let people in that would shake and disrupt your peace. Only let those people in who are for. Now, that's a muscle, my family. That's a muscle that we often have to develop and tend to. The muscle of not letting negativity, even though it may be a familiar face, a familiar sacred system, not letting negativity into our space. In fact, speaking to any negativity and saying, I will not have any of that here. So I don't allow people into my space that throw jabs at me. Not even kind jabs. Because even though it reads on the surface as funny, it has an internal effect. We know it does. We know it does. We take those things with us. So the overall point of my share is that you have agency, you have power, and you can use it. Of course, therapy is a part of your mental health. Of course, therapeutic groups, social support groups, peer support groups, all of those things are a vital part of your mental health. But you also have another avenue, which is the holistic and the spiritual integrative side of those things. So I want to give you a bit of homework before I go. Tori, pop on, because I'm going to give you the homework too. Come on. Okay. So here's my last little piece of homework. I invite each of you to scan your life and find one song that you know that at the listening of that song, your whole energy changes. I've got mine. Mine is from the field of gospel music, Mississippi Mass Choir, I'm Not Tired Yet. I'm sure you will have yours. It can be from any genre, one piece of music that pulls you into a right state of yourself. And that's me for now. Tori?
Woo! Wow.
Cocktail.
Yes. Wow. 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 We're going to hear a little bit more. We're going to actually take some questions towards the end. The three of, well, more so the two of you. I'm just going to kind of be the lump of coal in this fireplace of these two fires that are burning. But I actually wrote down, and sometime after Keo speaks, I'm going to share with you one of the songs. Thank you for that. Thank you, sister. Thank you. Thank you. So with that being said, we're going to transition over to Taiyo, who is going to give us about 20 minutes of inspiration.
No pressure. First of all, I'm so grateful to be here. And Tori, I'll always say yes to whatever you ask of me because of deep love and respect. And Valerie, I'm grateful to share space with you. And I'm particularly grateful, actually, for my own well-being to hear you. Um, my name is Taiyo Drake, and um, I do a lot of things in the world. And one of the things that I've been doing most of late is doing work with around trauma and healing, but particularly the ways in which we can actually work with our own trauma and in community with folks outside of the medical system, like the giving practices and an understanding of trauma that any of us can do with ourselves at home and also with one another as a way of demystifying trauma and demystifying kind of the healing, because we all have actually what we need to at least be able to be present enough to access other care that we might need, right? So a big part of this is actually to understand my story a little bit is that I am I'm a trans man. I've been living with HIV for nearly half my life, 27 years. And, you know, in order for me to be here, much like Valerie was saying, in order for me to be here, I needed to actually figure out how to live in the body I have, to live with the reality of what my life is like, and how to do that from a place that wasn't always sort of armored up, right? And a big part of trauma is that level of guardedness, right? Because, there's a good reason why most of us don't feel safe in the world and why we don't even feel safe often in connection with folks, right? We have all the reasons in the world for that. So a big part of understanding trauma is really understanding where it comes from, right? Like the very basics of it is to understand that we're evolutionary beings, right? And we have a mechanism to respond to threat, right? And folks have often heard the sort of fight, flight, freeze, which means that, something happens, like in the ways that you think about it, if you think about it from evolution's point of view, a danger comes up, right? And a tiger faces something that is a threat to the tiger, right? The tiger being kind of at the top of the food chain, the tiger's response is basically going to fight. Tigers rarely flee, they often fight, right? And so the tiger's response is the tiger feels a threat and the tiger comes forward and is ready to fight. And what happens is either in that fight, the tiger doesn't survive, and so there's no long lasting harm, right? From sort of an animal evolutionary perspective. Or the tiger wins the fight and all of that energy that had been pulled up to meet the danger is gone. So no trauma, right? And then you have a gazelle whose primary response to fear and threat is to run, right? So now tiger starts looking for lunch, sees the gazelle. The gazelle feels fear, right? And all of those same hormones, all those same energy comes up into the gazelle's body that came up for the tiger, and the gazelle runs. And either the gazelle doesn't outrun the tiger, right? And the gazelle doesn't survive. And so there's no lingering harm, right? As that is for the gazelle, right? Or the gazelle actually escapes, and in the escape burns through all of the energy that gets pulled up, right? But there's a weird thing. There's things, animals like possums, right? Who, when they feel threat, they go bunk and they fall over and they look dead. They actually just literally a scent that makes them like it's just genius, right? But what people were wondering was that freeze, right? Every single time an animal that's natural defense is to freeze, that animal, when the threat passes, and again, either the animal is attacked and doesn't survive, or it works. The mask of kind of the smell, looking dead, tiger's like not good lunch and leaves, right? All of those animals whose natural defenses were to freeze come out of that and they shake. And in the shaking is where the release of that energy goes. And so what we understand trauma to be is something happens, right? And it can be an event, a car accident, it can be something that has happened to us over a lifetime, like so violence from childhood, right? Violence that most trans folks I know have experienced when meeting the outside world, right? It's a reoccurring chronic exposure to violence and to threat. Or it can be often also historical, right? We can actually inherit some of that passed down, and we might not even understand why the legacy of certain things carries a level of trauma with it because we're detached from the original cause, right? But those ways of being in the world, when the event comes up and you have an experience, if there's a way to move through that where you don't feel trapped, right? Like you meet the danger, it passes, and you can return to a place of safety, and there has been no like stuckness, right? Then trauma doesn't happen. Trauma happens when we are met with a sense of danger and there's nowhere to go. And for a lot of us, those of us who are children, those of us experiencing, my cat is currently indifferent to my needs. Um, but those of us who are experiencing a system that doesn't give a fuck about us, right? Like there's a lot of ways that we get stuck. And what happens was when we chronically get stuck, those hormones have nowhere to go, right? We get trapped. And that will change our brain chemistry. It actually changes the wiring of our brain in a way that takes us away from what our birthright is, right? Our body will take care of itself. It would know how to deal with threat if we were left alone and no one hurt us and the world was welcoming. Our bodies would know what to do. And so some of the work that I've been doing and doing research with is looking at how do we go back to in Valerie's language, right? How do we go back to our divine birthright, right? How do we help our bodies find our way back to what we are born to do, right? To clear that. And there's a lot of ways to do that. And one of the things that um, the ways that we can change our brain is actually through practice. There's ways of settling our nervous systems that can actually take our brains and the harm that's been done and the ways that trauma has changed us. We have the ability to change that. We we can't go back to the ways we were, but we can actually, and it's often when you tear fabric, right? When fabric gets torn, the ways that it gets mended is often stronger than the original fabric, right? And that's exactly what happens with trauma and healing is that when we attend to the places we've been wounded, and I mean really attend to them, and when we do that as individuals and we do that collectively together, what gets changed is stronger than what existed before because it's been tested, right? And that's a big part of feeling, I think in Valerie was talking about feeling positive about the ways in which we take care of ourselves and one another is that the being tested and moving through that is actually part of what builds resilience. And Lord knows that we're called to be more resilient than we ever should be, but it is actually a part of that sort of building strength. And so the practices of like being able to settle the nervous system is about sort of being able to breathe and be in our bodies. And so a lot of times folks don't actually have, I can speak for myself actually. My natural inclination is to freeze. That is my sort of default. And I know a lot of folks whose natural inclination is actually to be incredibly anxious and sort of vibrate. And they're the exact same reasons, but they look different in the world, right? And so for me, having the ability to sort of breathe and get into my body, any way that I can send my body messages that it's okay right now. Like I've got this, it's okay right now is hugely healing. Right? And for folks who vibrate and whose sort of embodiment of trauma is up here at a very anxious level, being able to take that anxiety and not come all the way down, but be able to match it to a place that's a little bit settling is also huge. And so for someone like me, like a breath practice with rocking is enough movement to get me out of freeze, but not too much movement to shock my system, right? So if any of you just if you want to just rub your hands together and just put your hand on your heart and your hand on your belly, right? And I'm going to teach you to breathe for those of us who have struggled with that, right? Which is as you breathe in, your belly fills up, right? All the way up and it falls gently. Kind of an inhale and exhale. And again, a lot of times this stuff feels naive, but what we know is that the way to send a telegram to our brains that everything is okay with breath is about 10 seconds. So learning to actually breathe, that is sort of inhale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Like this sort of level of the ways that it does this is a great way to actually be able to calm, right? And for folks who have an activated system who are up here, one of the ways to do that actually is through dance and music, right? That the ability to meet the nervous system where it is a way of being able to bring it down. And so songs that are about 90 beats per minute are songs that actually to dance and jump around, to actually drum at that way. And often I will actually link to a video of a bunch of songs, but you can Google those. But the part of this to understand is that we are social creatures, and this is really important. None of us are meant to struggle on our own. We are actually meant to be with one another. And so when we address our own trauma, that's part of the puzzle, but it's about being really invested in doing our work and also being really invested in the healing of those around us. Because part of what doing work on our own trauma does is it lets us benefit from social connection. The two biggest pieces of healing that happen for trauma is actually attend and befriend. The ability, tending is the ability for us to offer care to others, and befriending is the ability for us to be vulnerable enough to accept care from others, right? Those two things have to show up at the same time. Not necessarily, but they have to show up in relationship to one another. We can't always be givers and we can't always be people who receive. We have to have the experience of both. And so part of this is none of us are meant to struggle alone. And we are meant to help one another survive. And we have what we need despite what the system tells us. We absolutely have what we need. And if folks are interested in sort of these practices, um, I would love to hear from you. And we do a lot of trauma trainings in community and in community spaces. So this is just a sort of a taste of this, but we would love to kind of help you have access to more of that. But mostly we can do this, and we can do this not alone. And it's one of the reasons why I'm really grateful to be in the company of folks who are here to be able to do this work. And Tori, would you like to come back? Hey there.
Wow. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Taiyo. That was amazing, as we all knew it would be. And let's have Valerie join us. Thank you. So, my brother and my sister, so there were a couple of things, a few things I'd really like to point out about what you all just shared with the world. Thank you for doing that. That one of the things that came up, both of you talked about healthy touching yourself or placing your hands. And there's healing in being able to affirm this vessel that you're in. And I thought that was incredibly powerful because you framed it in different ways. Valerie talked about putting your hand on your core, and Taiyo mentioned the heart and the abdomen. And in some ways, they're one and the same.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was just so powerful. So we both want you all to share a little bit about that. But even as we go to that, I have two words that I want you all. I'm going to give you a word, Valerie, and I want you to share because I've heard both of you talk about these things. I want you to tell us a little bit about trauma,
Mm.
Valerie, and then Taiyo, I want you to talk a little bit about healing.
Well, okay, I sure will. I'd just like to announce to the world that Taiyo has been recruited to serve in some capacity within HEI, within Holistic Empowerment Institute. Let's give him a huge hand. I'm so grateful to have another healer. So let's talk about trauma. We all talked about, I name things the way I name things because I'm a spiritual freak and I call it the sacred core, right? And Teo does the heart and the abdomen. It really is the same principle. I like to do a lot of things from an evidence-based practice called healing touch. In fact, our volunteers are being recruited right now, and those volunteers are a little bit different than most organizations. They're called healers in action. And a part of the healers in action orientation is about non-aggressive support, healing touch, healthy touch, some of those things. And I think they are very helpful, particularly because of trauma. Many of us don't know our bodies. Many of us who are trans don't necessarily have a relationship with our bodies as our bodies. We have a relationship with our bodies as these problematic vessels that need to be attended to, that need to be addressed. If we could just get something removed, if we could just get something fixed, if we could tighten the screws here, well, explain why is that? Well, explain why do you want that over there? We have this relationship with our body, but what we don't have a relationship with our body, it's ours. It's not a library book that we can turn in. It's actually ours. No matter how we manipulate this beautiful flesh, we will have it. For this particular intonation of the human experience, we will. And this flesh, this body, has been through its share of trauma, both physical trauma, right? Some of us have been attacked. I've been hit, right? All through high school. We should call high school for me the ass whipping years. Okay. I was whipped all through high school. But some of us have faced verbal traumas, right? Verbal traumas, taunts, assaults that actually get into the meat of the flesh and penetrate the heart of the flesh and become real to us. They become real to us, some of the things that they say. And some of those traumas are experiential traumas, things that we have been through, things that we have witnessed, things that we have been exposed to, stuff that we shouldn't have saw, that we should have saw, right? That we should not have saw, but we did see. Stuff, children witnessing sexual things at premature ages. Our bodies have experienced some things. And so I like to remind this old girl that she been good to me, right? I like to remind this old girl because often I'm from an older generation. I'm 55, right? And I love being in my 50s. But I'm from a generation of trans women where this body was purposeful for only one reason. Well, a couple. For one, you had to be as fishy and as puss as you possibly could be, or die, or to just die. If you were not simply unclockable, just wither, right? And the other use of this space was that we would be attracted to sex partners in love intimates because we both needed the affirmation, we needed the coins, and we were lonely. Right, we needed someone to tell us that we were beautiful women. So this flesh had purpose, but what the flesh did not have a purpose of being is mine. This is mine. This is mine. So I have to remind it that even though I took you to, the surgeon because I want something bigger on you or smaller or something moved, this old girl been good to me. Thank you for taking me through I've eaten this body up. I've deprived this body and got it skinny. and I'm somewhere in the middle right now. But this old girl has taken me through 55 years of taking shit from people that I did not want to take. This body has facilitated my patience. That's the other thing we have to give honor to. Your resilience, your patience, your fortitude, your ability to be quiet in the midst of wanting to speak, your ability to be still in the midst of needing or wanting to act. This body kept me out of prison because I didn't slap the shit out of somebody. And in this country, a slap is no longer a slap. A slap can have me dead, right? A slap is, I can die. So we really want to honor ourselves, not just as trans people, but as human people having a human experience. We want to honor it. We really do want to honor ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So many powerful words there, and we love it all. And we see some of the comments, not at all, but some of the comments, and we're going to address a few of those. So, Taiyo, tell us a little bit about healing. We heard some crossover because it's almost impossible to talk about trauma, especially in the roles that you both perform and the lives that you live. It's impossible to talk about healing without also giving something on it's impossible to talk about trauma without giving something on healing. So tell us a little bit about healing.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I love these spaces, right? Because the truth is, come here, you. The truth is that, cat has a cold. Is that the outside world actually only wants to talk about our trauma. They only want to talk about the ways that we're broken, right? And the ways that we're always going to be broken. And I think it's really imperative that we do acknowledge that the hurt that we hold, individually and also communally, right, that we hold, but that we acknowledge it in a way that isn't always going to be that story, right? Even if the next thing might come, that story doesn't have to stay, right? Like we can say, like, yeah, right, I carry a lot of hurt, and right, and I think to really talk about the fact that we can actually work on ourselves and love one another in ways that actually foster healing in a community, right? Like the ways that we actually heal the spaces that we're in, begin to create a different narrative. And I don't mean the story that our ears hear, I mean the story that our body feels, right? The story that our, and you talked about the heart space, right? A lot of folks don't know that your heart actually has brain cells. Your heart actually can send messages to your brain in a way that your brain understands, like, so that what we feel in our heart actually can act, our brain, they're not different places in many ways. So that way of sort of getting here first is one of the ways to actually change how we think. The ways that we are in our bodies can change the ways that we think. And I think it's a big part of that narrative is that we have what we need. Like we're not forever broken. We've been harmed, but we are not forever broken. And we don't need the system to fix us. We need the system for some tools, but the system doesn't have the answers for us. We just need to tell the system what we want and what we need, but we can do this for ourselves and with one another.
Oh, I love that. That we need to tell the systems what we want and need. That's powerful. That's very, very powerful. And it's true. It's very, very true. My t-shirt says protect trans kids. The system doesn't protect trans kids. So we need to tell the system what we need, and that's to protect trans kids. Thank you both for that. I'm not addressing every comment.
Can I chime on? I want to
Yes,
add.
please.
And we need, when we tell the system what we need for the clinicians who are in place, we need for them to be vocal and say, no, that's not what they need. I may not be trans, I am trans, but that's not what they need. And we need to speak to their need in full context, meaning we got to talk about racism, right? We have to include racism in on that trauma body, particularly for people of color right now.
That's good. That's good. And you can get that shirt on HRC's website too, if any of you would like to purchase. There are a whole bunch of other shirts. I think this will be an amazing thing for you to ally along with us on. Some of the comments, again, not all of them. I love what Quintisha says. Quintisha says, I'm not transgender, but you have my support. I love your energy. Be well, and everyone take care.
Thank you.
We love to hear that from everybody, but it's especially important to hear that from folks who are not transgender. because the folks that we're fighting against are not transgender. The folks who are trying to erase our existence are not transgender. So thank you very much for that.
Or they are and they don't know it yet. They are and
Oh,
they don't acknowledge it yet. Queenish, you don't tip out the house just yet, baby. You may be. Keep looking in the heart. You may
and
have a
we'll
little
welcome
trans
you
energy
too.
up in there.
We will welcome you too. We welcome everybody. I love that Heidi said, thank you for that. I love that Heidi said, how can I support my trans son who's 13 years old to love his body in this way? I love everything that you're saying. So, Taiyo, I would love for you to talk a little bit about this, if you would, very briefly.
Yeah, you know what? Honestly, that's a tall order. I don't know that I would ask a 13-year-old to love their body. I think what I would do is figure out what a truce looks like for now, right? Like, and I'm speaking my own personal experience. Like, I had to find a way to come home to myself, but to ask me to actually really love myself when I didn't even know how to be in my body in a way that felt at all at ease was almost impossible, right? Like, and it almost shamed me because I'm like you want me to do what? Like, and then I would feel bad about that, right? As opposed to what does neutral look like? Like, what is sort of, I know that you may not be happy with it, but it's here, and what do we need to do in order to have you feel some level of comfort until you can access whatever care you need to access, right? And that there's ways to do that, and some of that for some of us is medical intervention. Some of that is actually addressing sort of that level of, I would talk about as wanting to claw out of my own skin. Like, I would just get to this place where it was just all of that energy would build up, and we have to find releases, because if we don't find a release for that, it's going to turn on ourselves, right? Or it's going to turn out in the world, and we're going to like somehow get into trouble, right? Like, one of those two, it's going to turn in or out. But if we can find healthy ways to sort of discharge that, because the truth is, it's natural to feel uncomfortable. It's natural to feel unsettled. Like, how would you not feel that in a world that doesn't affirm who you are? And I think if you can at least come home to some level of ease and comfort, that makes asking the questions about what interventions do I need for me easier to ask than what interventions do I need because the world outside tells me I have to have that, right? And that's the only way to do that is to at least become friendly with your body, right?
That again, amazing. I can't think of a 13-year-old that I know who's totally comfortable with their body, who's cis or trans. And I love that. One of the best things that you can first familiarize yourself with your body and what your parts are, and figure out how they can work for you.
I want to add to that briefly.
Yes.
In loving and supporting your trans son, as parents, our job is to groom not necessarily who they become, but how they govern themselves in the world. And this may be a controversial statement, but I'm asking that you would love your son by not just supporting his body, but also supporting his growing masculinity,
Mm.
and support that growing masculinity by giving some suggestion to it so that it does not grow in. Because if we allow your son simply to operate on what he sees, particularly in the American experience, as masculinity, it will be toxic. So we've got to groom that masculinity so it can be healthy, individual, but not toxic.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you. I see Jessica. Jessica, we love you. Jessica says, I'm having trouble with thoughts of self harm
Hmm.
and I don't know how to handle it. I can afford GRS and counseling has, no, I can't afford GRS and counseling hasn't helped. Can we offer something to Jessica?
Well, first of all, shout out to you being a sister of the struggle, right? We all have had experiences where our vessel just does not serve us in the way that we think we should. So I really want to honor the challenge that you are going through as you're having this experience or these experiences. I want to invite you to press in, though. I'm going to press in just a little taste, right? I'm going to invite you to press in. I want to invite you to begin another relationship with your body. I want to suggest to you that a major element of that current relationship that you're having is an inherited relationship, right? The mental health community have strongly suggested, in fact, the social norm as a whole in terms of what is masculine and what is feminine has told you that your body is not right, that something's odd with it, that something's physically out of place with it. I want you to take that narrative and begin to call it bullshit and begin to love your body as it is. It will take work, it is a discipline, but you have agency. I want to honor the vessel that you occupy. I want to invite you to touch your body and give it love. And I'm going to hold you in grace as well.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Merci, bisous des États-Unis. Let's see. Okay, so we have a comment from Eve. Eve says, I'm an older pangender person, and it's been extremely difficult to find acceptance in the rainbow community. Like, I'm not gruff. Seems like everyone wants to perform female. So here's an interesting thing, Eve, that I will offer to you, and I certainly welcome space for our superstar guest today. There are times as trans people, because I know both of these folks, that we are not trans enough for other people.
Oh, God, no. I'm not even trying. I've retired.
That we're not trans people. I don't want to minimize your experience at all, but when we allow other people to dictate how queer we are, how trans we are, how Black we are, how white we are, then suddenly we give them far more power than they deserve.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is it's important to understand that even though we may have similar experiences, we're all getting to know one another, right? And the languages change, and so sometimes we actually have to have enough humility to say, like, can you tell me what your experience is? Like, and I'll tell you that I'm a pretty masculine queer trans man, right? Like flannel, I'm a woodworker, covered in sawdust most of the time, work boots, truck, the whole 9 yards, right? I'm a very gentle sort of soul. But on the binary spectrum, I'm pretty much all the way over there. And I am partnered with a flamboyant, genderqueer, makeup wearing, glitter spreading boy, right? Who, and who embodies transness in a very different way, and will say that he is neither here nor there, Peter Pan sort of boy, right? And and he's much younger than I am. And when we first met, we both had this sort of thing where I'm like you get to be this thing, right? You get to be in the middle. And I had this, it was in my body because of how I was forced to live, that I had this, not about him, but this sort of resentment, right? That his life was easier. And he had this resentment of people like me who are like, you keep telling me that I have to choose, right? Your folks tell me that I don't exist. And intergenerationally, we sat down and talked to one another. And it was like he could hear sort of the pain I had and the trauma I carried because of coming from an older generation, that he was like, oh, I get why it's hard to see me, because it is hard, right? And I could be like, I fucking fought for you to live that life. How dare I be resentful of it? Like, I fought for you not to have my experience, right? But sometimes we just have to get to know one another and to remember that I don't lose anything, right? In allowing someone else to have all the glitter in the world they want, right? I don't lose anything the bigger the world becomes. But I think we have to do that for one another, because certainly cis folks are not going to do that for us. But we have to pause to think about it.
Taiyo, I almost jumped out of my seat when you said that. You said, repeat it again, I don't lose anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't lose anything the bigger the world becomes, particularly the bigger the trans world becomes, the bigger the queer world becomes, right? I don't lose anything. Nothing diminishes me. There's just more space to roam. Right?
And also, I would tell that person, go ahead and occupy your pioneer space.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, trans women have been all the rage, and people are really over understanding us right now. They know too much. But many people don't know about the pansexual experience or the pangender experience. So that's your opportunity to really craft that narrative of what that will look like for the culture. So occupy your power. Although the queer community may not accept you, you still have some agency to say, so what, this is what you're accepting. Occupy your own sense of individuality. I remember when, I'm not telling my business, never mind, skip.
We love you for it. So, Heidi, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Because there's a certain type of, I don't use the word brave to describe people simply living their lives because, we are just all living our lives, hopefully the best way that we can. But thank you. It takes a little bit of bravery to ask a question to support somebody else. That's brave, and we appreciate that. We love all of our allies. There were quite a few comments from allies, and we really appreciate that, as we do each and every person that was here. All right. So, with that being said, we're actually it's time to go. Actually, so let's get, if we could, in this Taiyo, then Valerie, I want each of you to leave one closing word for the folks. Then we're going to say goodbye, and then the three of us are going to hang on the call for about another 3 minutes, just kind of to debrief. All right, and breathe, because this is amazing. All right, thank you, Octavia, for being here. Love you, sister. Taiyo?
I think embodiment is the word that I hold, right? It's how to come home.
How to come home. Wherever home is.
Yes.
Val?
If I had to do one word, I'm going to be self-serving right now. I'm going to say service. Service is a dynamic way to treat yourself well, to re-narrative yourself as powerful. And I have a great way for you to do some service. Log on to our website at beholistic.org and become one of our healers in action. Become one of our volunteers. You'll be oriented, you'll be loved on. So just go to our website, and at one of the subscriber places, just say, I want to be a healer in action, and we'll love you for it.
Thank you. Is that how they contact you also, Val?
Yeah, they can get at me through I'm still learning the website, even though I built it. But yes, they can contact me through the website.
Thank you. And how do folks contact you, Taiyo?
There's actually, in the same thing with our website, there's actually a contact form, and that goes directly to my partner, Alex, who does a much better job of managing email than I do.
Would you share your website one more time for the folks?
It's on the screen. Yeah.
Don't say it, because everybody can't read.
There you go. Transformingheartscollective.org. Yep.
Thank you. We want to be sure that we appeal to folks who learn differently.
Not one heart, but two hearts.
There you go. Yes.
Hearts, there you go. Transforming Hearts Collective. Yep.
So thank you all again. I am empowered and embodying this fluffiness today. I want to thank you both from the Human Rights Campaign and also from the Transgender Justice Initiative. We appreciate you, and we love you, and we thank you. And thank each and every one of you who joined in today. This was a really, really quick hour. Thank you for joining us for another session of Trans Talks. We're still experimenting if we're going to do them on Facebook Live, if we're going to do them on Instagram. We have another that's coming up. Our next one is scheduled for, I believe, the third week in June. So stay tuned for more details. I appreciate you, and I hope that today, and as part of May is Mental Health Awareness Month. That's one of the reasons why we thought it was incredibly important to bring this conversation today. So we encourage each and every one of you to prioritize your own mental, physical, and emotional wellness. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.